What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I wanted to put this in the beginning. Of course, we are coming to you live from Gotham Production Studios, which is our home here for X Drinking Buddy. Remember to subscribe on Patreon, patreon.com/Brennan Tassif. You can also follow on social media at X Drinking Buddy on Instagram, Twitter, and follow me at Brennan T Comedy on all social media. Check out BrennanTComedy.com for the upcoming shows. And don't forget to get your X Drinking Buddy merch. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Boom. That's it. Easy peasy.
Grab me a beer and grab me a coke. We about to sit for an hour, bullshit and tell jokes. And please don't mix it up, cause he done sobered up. Brennan T Comedy on your social media feeds. And Brennan Tassif is your ex drinking buddy. Brennan Tassif is your ex drinking buddy. Brennan Tassif is your ex drinking buddy. Brennan Tassif is your ex drinking buddy.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Brennan Tassif is your X Drinking Buddy. I'm your host, Brennan Tassif. If you're new to the program, quick rundown of the show. I used to be everyone's favorite drinking buddy. It was my favorite thing to do. Hang out with friends, get drunk, do drugs, get in all sorts of trouble, and then reminisce about those crazy stories. I am sober now, but it's still one of my favorite things to do. Hang out with somebody and reminisce about the crazy old days. Most weeks I'll be joined by a guest. This week is no exception. All the way from Atlanta, now in New York, Max Fine.
Oh, wow, dude. This is incredible. There's so much energy
What's
now.
up, brother?
Hey, dude. It's good to see you.
It's so good to see you, man.
Yeah, man.
Before we get too far into anything, plug everything up front. This will come out tomorrow for Patreon, everywhere Monday, so let everybody know.
Tomorrow, fuck. Okay, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter. It's at MaxFine_. I'm keeping Twitter alive, baby. I'm the only person.
We talked about this. Max was on a previous show, episode 116. We were talking about social media because that's what I used to talk about all the time. And you were like, yeah, man, Twitter. I love it.
I love it still.
You're like, it's like my dumping ground. Just
it's my idiot journal, brother. And then June 6th through 8th, I'll be in Columbus, Ohio.
Funny Bone?
Don't Tells. So I don't know if I'm allowed. Is it? I don't understand. Are they still secret?
I don't know. I have a friend that runs the Don't Tell in Jacksonville. And whenever she posts about it, it's like they don't tell you I think it's Don't Tell because they don't tell you the lineup.
Right, that's exactly right. So I might or might not be doing that. And then
I can neither confirm nor deny.
The 9th, I'll be in Chicago, still working that out. The 10th, Minneapolis, at Indeed Brewing. And then that's that for now.
Hell yeah, man.
Yeah, dude.
So it's at MaxFine_.
At MaxFine_. FindComedy.com if you want the real website.
The real,
experience. Yeah. It's all there.
So much to talk about, dude.
When was the last time we did this?
I was just going through a breakup, so it must have been December of last year.
Had I put the album out already?
No, that's what I want to talk about.
Oh, so it must have been before that.
It was before the album, and I'm so excited to have you back on because your career is kind of slingshotting. You're
trying to.
I know
I'm not quite there where
but some things...
I have no money, Brendan.
That's the great thing about comedy.
So much debt, dude. It is insane.
That means you're right on the cusp.
I hope, dude.
I pray that's the truth because I also have been indebted for...
Fucked.
Everyone's like, you make so much good money at the restaurant. I go, it's just to pay off, to keep the debtors at bay.
I have I think I'm pushing like 25 grand in debt.
There you go,
it's just
baby.
I've accepted that the IRS, I'm never going to get out of that. That's just forever.
You're just stuck, yeah.
Forever. And I hope to get to a point this year, the goal is to not sweat the $186 they pull out of my account every month.
Yeah.
That's all I want out of comedy. I want to be able to pay rent and not worry about that $186.
When I first moved here, because me and the ex had to save a bunch to come to, you know how it is, to get to New York. And
how long have you been here now?
Going on over 3 years now.
Hell yeah.
It was July of 21, so coming just past 3 years. But I remember we had money saved, and I was working at the steakhouse, and I was making good money, and I had not done a one-man show. I had not gone through a breakup and had to buy all new stuff and find an apartment. So
fucking sucks.
Dude, I remember I would just
funded your show, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And they say chase your dreams, but then you get that Capital One bill, and you're like, this was a fucking terrible idea.
Yeah, I know.
It was, but then I remember auto pay. I put everything on auto pay.
Yeah.
That's how well, you're doing well when you can put bills on auto pay.
I've never done that in my life.
And it was just whatever. And then we break up. Which is when I had you on because we talked about the breakup. And then I had to find a place, first, last security, the whole deal. Had to buy all new furniture because she bought most of the stuff.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, just debt started accruing. And
you made it that far without any?
Dude, And like, yeah.
Holy shit!
Well, I mean,
dude.
I still had like student loan
And you
debt.
really
and
think
stuff
you had
like
a
that.
drinking problem, brother? Because
Dude.
I took out credit cards.
I defaulted on all of those,
Oh.
but it was 7 years before.
Wait, stop. I know this is not a finance podcast, but what happens when you default?
So it's related to drinking.
Okay,
So
great.
When I first turned 18 and was in college,
Yeah,
the predatory credit card
I
companies.
got one of those too.
You know who you are.
Discover was mine.
Discover was mine.
Yep.
Hell
yeah.
I built my credit back up, and Discover was still like, no, we have you on record from like 15 years
Really?
ago.
I don't
so you
give
can't.
a shit.
So I took all these credit cards out, like three. It was like 3 of them, and I was like, oh, they're $300 limits.
What am
They're
I working
student
now?
credit cards.
Yeah.
I'm up to 12 now.
12 cards?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck me,
Playboy,
dude. I got
let's go. You want to
one,
talk about it?
two, I got a casino card.
There you go.
3. I got 4 right now.
I'm up
I
to
got 4.
12.
12?
My girlfriend Tracy's gonna hate that because whenever we talk
Does she
finances,
know?
she knows. She's very aware of my situation.
And she's still with you? That's incredible.
She's a saver though, and she like is she wants to eventually buy a house and raise children.
for
So
her.
she's been thinking
Yeah,
about this
great.
forever.
Yeah.
So she's been planning, and I'm like, whatever, I'll sell a show, and
Yeah.
it's gonna be fine.
How'd that go? yeah, dude, I get it.
So when you default on a card.
I'm listening. I've got something to show you.
When you default on a card, you basically like just stop paying it, stop talking to them. Well, 7 years is how long it takes. And then
Before what?
So what I learned was because I worked in an office for 3 months doing finance stuff.
Yes.
And what the guy told me is he's like, oh yeah, we also do like debt consolidation. And I was like, how does that
Isn't
work?
that the most predatory shit?
So this is what happened. And anybody listening, you can do this on your own.
I did a debt consolidation once.
Well, what happens is, so the Discover I defaulted on.
Uh-huh.
After a year or so, they sell that debt to somebody else,
Right.
for pennies on the dollar,
Right.
And then they sell that debt after a couple of years. Then they sell that debt. So what ends up happening is after about 5 to 8 years, if you dispute that debt, no one has the original paperwork you signed because it's been sold to like 10 different companies.
Really?
So you dispute it and just go, that's not mine. If you can produce the original paperwork saying that's my debt, I'll pay it, but that's not my debt. They can never produce it.
What?
So it just comes off of your
credit
Yeah.
score? So, what, you shoot your credit immediately, though,
my
right?
credit when I first went to rehab in 2013 was 385.
Yeah, I was around 400.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And before I moved to New York, it was at 710.
Okay.
But the thing was, before I moved to New York, I couldn't get cards. I didn't know about Credit Karma and all this stuff to track it. I didn't even know how to get a credit card. I was
Yeah.
just like, I'll never have credit cards. I just pay everything with a debit card. So I had very little debt. I
Yeah.
just had like student loans and medical stuff, again, from
Medical
drinking.
debt, though, doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't even. Well, student loans technically don't even count against your
I
score.
wouldn't know. I didn't go to. I didn't.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening was I built my credit score all the way back up, and then I got the pandemic hit, and I I took out a card,
Mhm.
and Capital One, huge shout out, as predatory as they are, like all of them, they were like, oh, you have a credit history from your student loans and stuff, and I had consolidated all that debt, like I was getting back on track, sober life, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
This is in 2018, so about 5 years after I first went to rehab and actually got sober. And they sent me a venture card, and I was like, I'll use this for comedy because I was taking comedy seriously again and stuff. And I was like, it's a travel card. Dude, $5,000 limit. Right as the pandemic hit, that floated me for the pandemic. And I was
Really?
like, yeah, dude. And I was paying it off every month. And I
Yeah.
had like 2 other cards, and I was paying them off every month. And then shit happens in life, man.
I
And
know.
the breakup and everything. And then all of a sudden I just started, it's quicksand. It's from that movie, The Replacements, where you think
Yeah.
everything's going fine, and then one thing goes wrong, and then another, and another, and then all of a sudden you can't breathe.
Yes.
Because you're in over your head.
Dude, it's a disaster.
That's exactly what
It's a disaster.
I was like. And then it got to the point, Tracy, cover your ears. It got to the point where I was taking out like those minimum, like bullshit, like horrific predatory credit cards that only have like a $500 limit.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I don't know how I'm going to pay for groceries. I don't
You're
know
just
how.
screaming at the choir.
Yeah. And I'm
Yeah.
like, so I was taking, so that's why I ended up with so many cards, because I had good enough credit to where I could get those like super predatory cards. They were
Yeah.
like, yeah, absolutely. But they only had like $300 limits. And at the, my check every week is pretty substantial,
Sure.
for a guy just working 4 days a week, after taxes and everything. So I had enough to where I could pay like the minimum payments on
Yeah.
everything. But then it just became this vicious circle of paying minimum payments on everything.
Dude, it's brutal. It's brutal.
So, but we talked about, what were you going to show me?
Oh, like this is how well comedy's going. If I pull up my statement from my album from last month, and keep in mind, I'll show you maybe don't say the number, but
Yeah.
I'll show you the earnings to date to
Yeah.
give you an idea of just how well my career is going. When you say slingshot, that was... It's like, yeah, dude, I really was like, this is going to be great.
It's not a high amount for those of you listening.
No, and it's really made me question everything. Am I good at this? Do I have any idea what I'm doing?
Does anybody like me?
Not at all, dude.
So since the last time you've been on, huge things have happened, and I am so proud of you and the things you've accomplished.
Thanks, bud. Yeah.
Dude, the biggest news, you put out the album.
Mhm.
So check it out. Where can people find it?
Everywhere. It's on Spotify. It's on iTunes. It's on blondemedicine.com. You can get the vinyl.
Yes.
It's everywhere. You can get
Max
everything.
Fine. What's the name of it?
Oh, I like his style.
I like
is the
his
name
style.
of the
That
album.
was it.
And that's the thing. I don't know if the content is great. I do think it's the best looking album.
It's so good.
Nobody's put out one that's aesthetically as clean as
It's
that one.
super
It's great.
clean. It's crisp, man.
It's great.
I remember when I came to your apartment
Yeah.
in the minivan.
Yeah.
You were getting ready for the special shoot because
Oh,
you
shit,
had the
really?
Post-its everywhere.
Well, then that was
and I was talking to you about
that
it.
was a long time ago. Then that was
Yeah.
almost a year ago.
Yeah, because I released on Patreon in May of 2023, and I came on
Great,
your
yeah.
podcast to promote it.
Yes, because I recorded that June 24th of last year.
Yeah, so it would have been right before.
Right before, and then it came out in October.
Dude. And then the biggest news of all. Do you want to
Sure.
tell them?
Oh, well, yeah, I'm in at the cellar.
Yes!
That's cool. It is very cool.
Ladies and gentlemen, Max Fine, our paid regular at the biggest,
it's very
best
cool.
comedy club
Yeah.
in the world.
It's the coolest. I'm just waiting for it to go away. Like I'm trying not to get too excited about it. Like it's the coolest thing that's ever happened because so I got laid off from my job at 2 p.m. on March 1st.
Yeah, take us through exactly, because I love these stories about
Sure.
how this even happens, because it's
Well,
different
yeah.
for everybody.
Yeah, it was like I was really gung-ho forever.
This is 2024?
Yeah, this was in
Okay.
March. So this is like 3 months ago.
So what job are you working?
I had a customer service gig that was completely remote.
Okay.
And it didn't pay great, but it was like, this is huge
Yeah.
for me right
well,
now.
and especially because you were traveling and stuff for comedy, so that's
Yeah,
just
and I
extra
could, like,
money.
Yes. And it was like, it was insurance. It was like a steady paycheck that I could like bank on. And then on March 1st, they laid me off at 2 p.m. and I had my audition at 8 and I got passed like right then. And it's like,
What is that? How did you get the audition?
so I had to get 2 recs.
Yeah, so that's for those of you listening who don't know, and I know it's talked about on plenty of other comedy podcasts, so you're like, why do we care what Brennan has to say? Every club has a different standard.
Totally.
So some clubs, it's if the booker likes you, they'll just pass you. Some clubs you need one recommendation from a fellow comic.
Yeah.
Some you need 2. It just depends on the club and the booker and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The Comedy Cellar is notorious. You need 2 recs from well-established cellar comics.
Yes.
And a rec is basically, it's a recommendation. It's another comic putting themselves out there saying, hey, Esty, I
Yeah.
think this guy is or girl is good enough to perform here.
Yes.
And it's the best club in the world. So those recs don't come lightly. Like the comics understand what it means to wreck somebody.
Yes. And it's the thing about it is this is what I've realized just in the short amount of time I've been there. It's like not only is it's not necessarily about how good the comic is. It's really about how well they fit into that room. It's
That
the hardest.
environment.
Yeah, because I really walked into it like this will be a kill box, no problem. And it's the hardest comedy club I've ever performed at.
It's the most, other than the store in LA, which I would say the Comedy Cellar is above that. But that's
I think
because we
it just
live in New
depends on-
York.
yeah.
But it's the most renowned and famous club in the world.
Yes.
When people come to New York and they say, I want to see stand-up, their first go-to is always the Cellar.
Yes.
And I say that to say, 1, it's incredibly hard to get past there.
Sure.
And 2, you have people from every walk of
Everywhere.
life.
And a lot of them don't speak English as their
Yeah.
first language. A lot of them are older. Some of them are 21. It's just like,
The diversity in that room
it's crazy.
makes it difficult.
Totally. And each room is different because
Yeah.
there's 4 of them. And like, I love the original room. I
Dude.
love the bar. Everybody talks shit about the bar.
At Fat Black?
Yeah.
I've done that room. That room, I love that
so
room.
there's the lounge, which is one thing. And then on weekends, they open up the bar.
Yeah.
Which is just a bar show, essentially. And
Yeah.
that's like my bread and butter.
You love that.
I
You're
love
like-
that. Yeah, dude.
I came up doing shows in a hangar.
Exactly,
Let's go.
exactly. So like where a lot of people struggle with that one, I'm like, this is the best. Like everybody's wasted, and like they didn't get into the main room.
Yeah, there's like 60 people. It doesn't hold like underground holds like 250 people.
Yes,
and that's got to be nuts.
That's the hardest one, I think, because it's like that one. You really have to be like as sharp as you can be, because it's the most like not a theater, but it's like a bigger club on the road where it's like there's 200 people in here. You can't see them all. You can barely get through them all. Like. It's just different.
Well, and also when you're on the road, you can, and I talked about this with my buddy Brent from the Carolinas. He was like, we get a lot of New York comics that come in here and Blankney. And he's like, sometimes they think, oh, we'll talk about the subway. I'm like, dude, this is South Carolina. Bro. What are you doing?
Yeah.
But I say that to say, like, when you're on the road, you can adjust.
Yes.
You came up in the South. You started in the South in Atlanta. So you understand, like, if you're somewhere in bumfuck nowhere, you're like, okay, I just got to get the vibe of these people. The thing that's different with the Cellar is it's every different place you've performed in one room.
Totally.
So there's super liberal people, super conservative people. There's people who don't speak English, black, white, Latino. It's everyone.
Yes.
So you could say a bit and it crushes with some people and other people are like, the fuck?
Well, the weirdest is if you have like two spots in different rooms in the night or on the same room, it's like, oh, this killed the last one and it ate shit on this. And it's just wild. Like, because, like, I think over the years I've gotten good with like the first joke is always something to get a litmus test, and then I can kind of adjust on the way. But like to your point, like the Cellar is the only place where it's like, oh, you can do your subway shit, and people are like, we're on vacation in New York City. How crazy is it that he's talking about being on the subway? We were just on the subway.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's like there's little things,
and it's fresh for them too,
always, and they're excited about it.
We just saw a crazy person.
Yes, and then the hardest part is when you get like the hardcore comedy fans that are like, yeah, I come here every time I'm in New York, or I live here and I come here. Like, dude, my therapist, when I got passed, she was like, this is the first time I've been going to her for about a year, and I've talked comedy about her with every session, just like, this is where I'm at with this. As soon as I was like, well, I got passed to the Comedy Cellar, she like put her pencil down. She's like, okay, we have to have a conversation. I was like, what's up? She was like, I go to the Cellar like at least once a week, if not more.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, fuck. Like, there are hardcore comedy fans, and it's like that fear that you always have about like, oh, I can't repeat a set.
Yeah, we talked about that,
Yeah, is not only has to like just go out the window when you're there, but it also becomes like, oh, so there are people that see the same set twice.
That's how, when I first moved to New York, and the listeners know this, I think you know this, but I've been a fan of comedy since I was like 12 years old.
Sure,
I used to record Comedy Central Presents on VHS and just watch them over and over and over. And when I first moved to New York, and I'm still upset, and I talked to List about this because he's like, yeah, I don't really watch a lot of comedy anymore when he was on my show. And I was like, dude, I'll watch the same set like 3 times in a night. If I'm at the stand hanging out, I'll just go downstairs and just watch it over and over.
Interesting.
Because I don't know, that whole idea, and what I think makes comedy special is just using words where invoking a reaction.
Sure.
And music is very similar in that sense, but music, you have the melody and the beat, and there's like a tone to it.
Yes.
With comedy, it's just word, like it's just us talking.
Sure.
And so I'm obsessed with it. So it's interesting you say that, because like I'm one of those people where I was, when I first moved here, I was at the Stand and or the Cellar every night.
I used to be. I think.
It's one of those things where now, since I've been here for a few years, and you get busy, and it's one of those things where you can't go all the time.
Sure.
But the Cellar is still one of the places where I still feel like I'm trying to sit at the cool kids table whenever I go there.
Everybody is. It's like, I know people that have been passed there for years that are like, I'm scared.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, that's what it is. And it's all right. I kind of love it because it's like,
keeps you on your toes,
it keeps you on your toes. And because of that, it's like, you don't get a chance to not treat it like a job.
Yeah.
When you're there. And it's just like shifted perspectives. Like when I'm there, it is to put the best. It's not to try anything new. It's not to try and do like art. It's like, I need to put forth the best jokes that I have, and everything else I can fuck around with.
Yeah. And it's interesting because like I hear people because I listen to a lot of comedy podcasts still, and I hear people like Shane Gillis talking about, bombing at this, like,
I couldn't imagine
eating a dick, and it
happened once for me, and it was the worst feeling that's ever happened.
And it's one of those things where like he's who he is, and he's like, he's like this massive star now, and like this was recent. This was like a few months ago where I was listening to his the Secret podcast, and he was like, yeah, I just bombed.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so that happens.
Totally.
Even with people who are that established and like you think they can just, because especially comics at my level, you think there's these certain people who can just walk into a room and just crush every time.
But dude, that's the thing. Like, so I watched, I'm not going to say who it was, but I saw somebody who I have been a fan of since I started comedy. Like, they were just this mythical comic to me where it was like, I thought everything they did was so different. Every time they came to Atlanta, I was like, what the fuck am I seeing? This is crazy. And since I moved to New York, I've seen them 100,000 times. The Cellar's the only place I've seen them struggle.
Wow.
And it's like, but at the same time, I know that act would kill anywhere else.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's different.
Yeah.
It's so different and it's so unique. And maybe it doesn't fit in that show at that night.
Well, and it's to your point earlier, where it's not so much about the followers you have or the content you put out, but it's more about the fit in that room.
Totally.
So let's talk. I want to talk about it, and we'll get to some of the like the drinking stuff and stuff like that. We talked a lot about it on your first episode, but are you still not drinking?
Yeah.
Beautiful,
yeah,
baby.
it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all right. I don't even think about it anymore.
Yeah,
you know,
that's good.
It's at that point where it's like, all right. And the nice thing.
Well, if you ever feel like you want to drink again,
sure, I've got a number.
Go back and listen to your episode.
Well, that's the thing, dude. It's like, I know.
Talking about getting, what did you call it on the subway? There's a term for it when
Lushed?
Lush.
Yeah. I mean, dude, it's like, there's that, and I miss the fun of like the stories after, but there's like no question in my head. It's like, if I start drinking, I will lose everything.
And now you have a lot more to lose.
Totally. Well, money-wise, I got way less.
Money-wise, you have way less.
I mean, honestly, drinking could be good for my bank account. Like,
I think about that sometimes where I'm like, if I started drinking again, I would just show up to places and
hours early.
Well, not only that, but just be way more extroverted. Because I'm by nature an introvert, even though I'm like loud and boisterous. I'm an extroverted introvert where like when I need to turn it on, I can't, but I'd much rather be at home playing fucking Starfield on my Xbox than being out.
Dude, and it's playoff season. I just want to watch basketball.
But it's just one of those things where if I started drinking again, I would just walk into the cellar and be like, Liz,
I know.
put me up.
But you know what, dude? You see people do that. And every time, I had never seen it before I was there because like, I was so scared to be in that bar. But like,
I go there. Yeah. I try to go once a week.
Yeah.
Just because I know working at the restaurant, I've met a lot of people.
Dude, the servers are my favorite part of it.
Yeah. And not only that, but the steakhouse I work at is in between the stand and the cellar.
Right.
So like Sam's a regular, Liz is a regular. So I know them.
Right.
So I always am like, just go and just say hi. Like, you're not asking for anything. You don't want anything. Just be around it.
Sure.
And I still, every time I walk in there, my brain goes, go, get out.
Dude, I have a spot at the cellar tonight, like that room. And I will probably hang out outside until 10 minutes before my set because I'm so afraid of like fucking up. Because like, I don't know. I feel like Well, I got us off track. You were talking about you've seen people go up to like people. Oh,
and
yeah, dude.
So what is that? Well, hang on. Let's go all the way back. Take us through March 1st, 2024.
Yeah.
You get laid off. How much time did you have before you knew you were auditioning?
I think I
was it an email?
It was an email, but like I couldn't do it the initial date she asked. I was out of town, and then so I had an idea.
Were you terrified to be like, I can't make that?
So I called 3 different people before I sent that email. I was like,
because we talked to Michael Rowland, who's one of your closest friends, about this when he was on. He said the same thing. He's like, I get so scared about being like, hey, these are my avails.
Yeah, dude.
Like he said, I think the way he put it was, I give avails to everyone except Esty.
Really?
Well, like in the sense that he's just like, whatever dates you need. And this was, years ago when he came on the show, but he was like, I don't tell her, like, she can book me wherever she wants. Everyone else.
Yeah, dude.
That's what I'm saying. Is like everyone else gets specific avails. Esty, it's like wide open, whatever you need.
Totally. And like,
and I was like, really? He's like, I'm terrified.
Dude, absolutely. Because like, unless I'm out of town, I will cancel any other spot that I have booked. It's like, it's just like, I have my own show tonight that I'm missing because it's like the backyard show. And it's like my favorite thing, but I'm like, I'm sorry, I have to I can't be there.
So take us through it. So you couldn't go the first audition because you were out of town.
Yes.
And were you like, that's it? It's over? Because that's what I would be. I'm a catastrophizer. I'd be like,
yes, that was it. But in my head, I had kind of said to myself, like, well, she offered you an audition. And as far as I'm concerned, that is enough to float me for at least a couple months.
Yeah.
Like, all right, she saw your tape, said, come on in and try. And then she was really cool about it. She was like, just come on this date on Friday. And I was like, great.
It's always Friday, 7 o'clock or 8
Maybe.
o'clock.
I know that was mine. And I assume it's, yeah. And then she gives you 5 minutes at the cellar, and they really
the original room,
Yes.
and it's at the beginning of the show. It's like 2 comics in, right?
something like that.
Yeah. I've studied.
No, for sure.
I'm like waiting for my opportunity.
dude. Well, my whole thing was like, once I got let go, I was like, well, this either is going to work or I'm not going to do comedy ever again. I was like, I can't not have this and not have a job.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things where like I did the audition. And
Were you freaking out, throwing up? Like what was
no,
going on?
I was like, I felt pretty good.
Yeah.
Because I was like, at that point, I really did feel like, well, I've got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
It's like, I either get this.
And that makes you a very dangerous person, baby.
Totally.
Let's go.
And so like I went, and it was like in the 5 minutes, I like in the middle of it, there was a moment like in the middle of the set where I looked to my right, and like it's like there's a table on the right side.
Mhm.
So it's not like you're in the middle of the audience when you're on that stage. And I was like, I've only seen this view from episodes of Louie.
Yeah.
And I was like, if I don't get this, I'm pretty okay with just
you're
like,
here.
I got to do it, and that was fine. And like within 5 minutes, I was like, within minute like 3, I was like, I'm killing. And if she doesn't like it, this is the best I can do, and I won't be upset if she says no.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I know that it's not going to get better than this.
Yeah.
I went into the hall, hugged one of my buddies that was there, Ethan Simmons Patterson.
Love Ethan.
He's the best. And then Esty was like, you guys got to go upstairs. Like, you're in the hall. You're like blocking shit. And I was like, all right, she's talking to me in this way. Like, I've heard that, you know.
So I've been there for, and I've talked about it before, when Dan Lamort did his audition. I went with him. And he was past like 2 years into comedy, just wasn't ready. And I don't think he'd mind me talking about this because we talked about it on his episode, but then he gets passed again like 5 years later. And I remember going with him to his audition.
Yeah.
And they told him to go back upstairs. And then we just sat upstairs, and Esty was at the back table, and someone I guess told him like, "Oh, she'll come and get you."
That's
like,
exactly
yeah. So we just sat there, dude. We sat there for like 45 minutes, and I'm freaking out for him. He was kind of cool as a cucumber because he's been doing comedy a long time.
Well, you have to be. I feel like once you've done it, it's like, well, it's either she likes it or doesn't.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
There's nothing more I can.
And
do.
I was like freaking out, and then she did one of she's like a mafia don in there, dude.
It's scary.
She does one of these, and then he walks over and she just gives him one of these.
Yeah,
and that was it.
Yeah, man. So like
There was no talking.
I was talking to Ethan upstairs. She talked to Ethan. And then she was like, all right, let's sit down. I need your email. And I was like, holy shit. And it didn't really register. It still hasn't really registered. I
know. I'm like so excited for it. I'm like,
it's hard because it's like the parts that I really want out of it. Like, I do love comedy and the history of it. I'll watch anyone that's before me, after me at the Cellar. Like, I'm good about that. And I watch specials more than I ever have now.
Yeah.
But what I want to do is like hang out with her and just hear stories.
Yeah.
But I don't want to seem like a kiss ass, And it's like, because I'm so fascinated by like she's seen Robin Williams do stand up. And it's like, I want to know what that's like. I don't want her to be like, you're kissing my ass and I'm done with you.
Yeah.
And it's so like, that's the entire thing, is just finding the balance of what is cool to do there and what isn't. And
that's a long learning process.
It is. And it's like, because the other part of it is like, what I didn't expect was for the staff to become like as close as they have.
Yeah.
The comics are great. I love most of the people that I know there, if not all. But like, dude, the staff is there every night, and they see what works and what doesn't, and they're like super supportive and like, this is what you want to.
Well, and a bunch of them are comics.
Well, we don't talk about that. Because I don't want to blow their shit up.
I'm gonna have to edit that out.
Well, I mean, yes, they are, but it's not a secret, but it is one of those things where I know a couple of them. Like, I don't tell them I do comedy, and like I don't know who's cool with it and who isn't.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's like, they're all comedy fans at the end of the day, and you can see
that's a better way to put it.
Yeah, and it's like when you see someone that like doesn't do comedy laughing at a joke they've probably heard 40 times.
It's the best.
It's like, oh shit. That is something that like you clock, and it's like, what did they do to do this? How did they get that reaction? How did they say these things?
Yeah.
And I think the coolest part is like I've watched jokes that I've done for years change just because of being there. God. That never changed before. And it's like just timing is different. Like that's been the most exciting part. It's the only place I've ever been like I'm seeing growth that I wasn't able to like clock before.
Well, we talked about this on your first episode, but just the amount of writing, the difference between, because we both come from the South, so the difference between the amount of writing we were doing down there, and both of us were kind of drinking when we were in the South.
Heavily.
The difference between
I wouldn't say kind of at all. I mean, dude, I didn't have any sobriety in Atlanta. That's not true. I didn't have any sobriety when I left Atlanta.
Yeah.
Not except for the 3 months I'd cobbled together a couple years before. But like, yeah, man, I didn't have a coherent set.
Yeah.
I like legitimately the first 7 years I did stand up, I don't think I wasn't wasted.
Yeah. And that's a problem that I had was when I first got on stage, I was like, oh, I'll have a couple of drinks to take the edge off. And then you end up getting
into 10.
Yeah, you get hammered and then you're like, I'm still nervous.
Did you do this? This was my big move. I would always, because like this is my favorite part about moving to New York. It took me a while to adjust, but bucket mics.
Oh, yeah.
I love a bucket mic.
Yeah.
In Atlanta, they all used to be lists. And I would get hammered and put myself at the end of the list. Because I was so afraid. I was so fucking scared of, oh, shit, if I'm up first, if I bomb, then this, I won't be drunk enough, and this, that, and the other. And it's like, I know if I put myself 20th on a list where everybody's doing 5 minutes, I'll be pretty hammered and comfortable by the time I get on stage. And it's like, dude, I tell you what, I've been putting a Zen in lately when I go on stage. I feel more powerful than ever before, dude. I'm doing shit. It's crazy. I was always so worried. It's like, hey, you might choke on it or whatever. And now I'm like, holy fuck, dude.
I've been getting up at Broadway at the 10 like I'm like the second to last comic on the 10 o'clock shows.
Yeah.
And it's been so fun because I work on Mondays. And so normally I'm coming from work. So the last time I went up, this was probably stupid, but I chugged a Red Bull on my way there. And then as soon as I got there, they're like, okay, there's this comic and then you're next. And I was like, hell yeah, like let's, and I'm like, I'm gonna be high energy tonight. Yeah. I'm feeling a little high energy tonight. And then I threw a Zen in right before I got on stage. And obviously, just the way I look, I got up there and I was like, what's up, guys? Screaming at the audience. And they immediately all pulled back. And I was like, this is a terrible idea. Dude. This was so stupid. This is so stupid.
Well, it's funny to see like what gets me now. Like I had a shot of espresso at like 10:30 a few weeks ago before a set. And I have never been that jacked. And it's like, I drink coffee all morning, nothing happens.
Yeah.
At night, if I have a shot of espresso, because they're 15 minutes cents at the cellar, and I was like 12 in, and I was like, I'm about to run out of material. Like, I am. Oh, no.
And it has to your point, it has to be like your A stuff. And you're like, I'm out. I'm out of bullets.
Like, well, because like, dude, and because like I was like, I'm going to pick 20 that I have and just kind of switch things out as needed. And I was like, thank God I did this, because it was a moment in my head where I was on stage. Like, I remember having the like presence of mind to be like, if you didn't prepare for an extra 5 minutes here and there, you'd be fucked. Yeah. You would be so fucked.
Go to crowd work?
Yeah, I don't want to do crowd work because I'm so afraid that she'll be like, well, what
are you doing?
Yeah, she's like, we don't know you well enough to do that. And it's like,
who the fuck do you think you are?
Yeah, man. And it's like, because this is the other thing. My comedy is entirely question-based. Every setup is a question. It's never like, hey, here's a joke. It's like, do y'all ever, like, every time. And so it's like, I already ride this line of, if someone says something out of pocket, I'm fucked. And then, and
no. You're supposed to say no. We'll try it again. Say this.
No. You don't have this, right? You've never seen this, dude. This didn't happen at the Cellar, but I have a bit about when Russia invaded Georgia and the country.
Yeah,
and it starts with the day.
I know this. Yeah,
dude. And I've been doing this joke for almost 10 years, and the first time ever, I fucking said the date. I was like, y'all remember this date? And no one's ever said yes. Someone was like, yeah, that was when Russia invaded. I was like, you bitch. I was like, how did you? And she's like, well, I'm from Georgia. I was like, you're fucking me so hard. Like, I get it. You're a refugee.
Moving on.
You're fucking my joke up. Like, it was crazy.
I get you're a refugee. Yeah. You're really fucking this up.
Yeah, dude. And it's like,
it's not a call and response. I shade it that way.
No, I need everybody to say no. Yeah. Because in 6 minutes when I bring this back to the date, you're all going to be like, oh. And yeah, dude, but I'm so afraid of something like that happening at the Cellar now.
So when you were talking to Esty, you said it didn't register, but were like, what is the emotion that you're feeling? Were you,
dude,
was it relief? Were you jacked up? Like, what was going? When she says, "I need your email, I need your avails," like yada yada, like you email on Tuesday, you'll get your dates on Thursday for the next week. Like, what's going through your head?
It was.
Or is it just like fog? Like fog?
That was it. It was like that, and then everything she said to me, I had to ask someone else what she had said to me. Like, okay, what do I need to send her and shit? And then it turns in because everything is an issue. When I had to fill out tax forms like the I-9s, couldn't get them the right way. I had to send them 3 times, and I was like, I just didn't.
That's why you're going to be paying the IRS back forever.
No kidding. But so like I keep fucking it up, and they're like, "You've got to do this," and I was like, "I'm never going to work here. I'm just never going to do it." And so like. That's kind of my, mode of, is just like, this is going to go away tomorrow. Don't get comfortable. Do not get used to it.
Always stay in the pocket,
Always,
baby.
because I don't know if you saw, you made $2.71 on your album last month.
I didn't know. You said don't tell the number.
I know. Well, the year to date is the one I'm not stoked to tell about. But like, yeah, man, it's like this could go away, and this is not a job that has like stability.
Yeah, that's what makes it so fun, though.
Kind of.
I mean, we are creatures of chaos. Just the lives we live.
Yes, but I
mean, you had a Facebook group in high school.
I know.
Save Max Fine.
Yeah, but it was also like, yes. And I think the problem that I have with it is this is the longest I've gone without drinking.
Yeah.
And it's the least amount of money I've ever had. And
it's so bizarre when people are like, well, you're sober now. How much money are you saving? It's got to be a ton. And it's like, do you know how expensive it is to live a healthy, normal life?
Dude, fuck that. I have not been able to get out of this mindset of, well, you're saving money by not drinking, so you can spend it on more. And it's like...
And I'm an instant gratification guy, so it's like...
No, you don't say. Yeah. It's like, dude, I am such a fucking dopamine fiend where it's like, I need to either
I need it now. I need it now.
Yes, and that's why you work out a lot. I go to the gym every day, and I don't get the high of, I feel juiced. It's like, it's taking too long.
Can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
I don't get that either anymore.
Really?
Now I just go.
It's like cigarettes.
Yeah. This is something I always took to heart. There's a difference between motivation and discipline. Which is like when I was drinking, I was incredibly disciplined about it.
Sure.
Like I was going to drink every day. Like there was nothing that was going to get in the way of that. And we talked about this on your last episode, but it's worth revisiting is the creativity that you can aspire to being that kind of an alcoholic, which is not a good thing, but it's still like it's in your brain to do that. And so when I got sober, the gym was my natural replacement as someone who played college football and stuff. I was like, it'll just be the gym. And normally I'm one of the strongest people in there, and I still just can't get that same like oomph from it.
It's hard, man, because it's like, I don't know. For me, a big part of drinking was it's the only time where I'm like, well, if I'm not in control of the situation, that's okay.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's preferred.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
The only time where I could let go was when I was drunk.
Exactly. So now it's like I'm searching for some kind of high that is letting go.
Yeah.
And the only time I really feel that is when I'm bombing on stage.
Well, let's talk about it. You said you've only ever bombed one time there.
At the Cellar, yeah.
Yeah. And so take us through that because we talked about you killing in your audition and you were like, oh, I'm doing it, and then getting past. You've been there for a few months now. What? And if you're not comfortable talking about it, because sometimes people are like, I don't want to talk about bombs, but that's like one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Take us through because they're 50-minute sets. So 2 minutes into the set, 5 minutes. When are you like, this isn't going?
Before I went up. It was because it's like, it was one of those things where, when you watch a bunch of people just tank and you're like, oh, I'm going to be fine.
Yeah.
I can fix this. Because that's always... Because
we're like NBA coaches with like the fucking 5-year player who's like just been traded 4 times.
Exactly.
We'll fix him.
Yes. And it's like, but the thing about it is like, in almost any other show, that's why I'm there.
Yeah.
Is like,
you are a cleanup guy.
That's
dude.
it. That's it. And I've always been.
Going to a Goblin show, you fucking murder it.
Well, thanks, man. But it's like, that's what I've gotten good at. And that's why it's always harder on a good show.
Yeah.
It's like, no. I know how to yell at people until they're into it.
Yeah, and you're also a vet of comedy,
but so is everybody else at the Cellar. And they're further.
So that's what I'm saying. Is like on those smaller shows, a lot of times because you love comedy, you love doing comedy.
Yeah.
So you do shows sometimes. I'm sure this is gonna have to happen, and where you look at the lineup and you're like, oh, I'm like not the best, but you're like, I'm the most seasoned guy.
Kind of, but
here.
it's like I think this is
clean this up.
yes, but it's like also
You go to the cellar and Andrew Schultz bombs, and you're like, I guess this is going to be a bad day,
dude. Well, it's like it's that 2 a.m. spot in the lounge, and it's the hardest. It's it's hard. They're all wasted. It's
because there's a difference between everyone being like a little buzzed and being blackout.
Yes,
drunk.
and at 2 a.m., most of the people in Greenwich Village are drunk.
Yeah,
and it's just a different muscle. And
so what happens? You're watching the comic before you, and you're like, "Oh, I'm
watching everybody bomb.
Like, I'm going to take care of this."
Kind of, because it's like it's not even that it's this ego of like, well, I'm better than them. It's just I know this situation.
Yeah, you came up in the South, baby. This is every show.
Yes, but then you also, and it's like in my head, it's like, well, they've been doing these rooms so long that maybe it's like, and then you get up and it's like,
you've forgotten what it's like, Bruce.
Right.
Victory has defeated you.
Exactly, dude. And then the first like minute. The first minute I went from, I got him to, this is going to be long.
This is bad.
And it's just a lot of like, and then it does become, dude, so this is when it really got bad. Because like minute 3 is when I knew it was so, because I started.
These are my favorite stories.
Well, dude, it's like, there's one guy in the front row, he's got gauges, he's got a band t-shirt that I know, and I'm like talking to him, and I'm like, thank God. Everybody else might hate me, but this guy who's front and center is on my side.
He gets it.
And as long as I focus on him, I'm going to be okay.
I've had those shows before.
Yes. And I grabbed the mic stand, and I had stepped on the cable, and I ripped the fucking mic right out of the thing. Falls right into his bag of fries or whatever, his basket of fries, knock them all over. And I'm like, oh, good. The one guy that liked me is now pissed that his fries are gone.
This is 3 minutes in?
Yeah, because I was taking the mic out. It was like so early. And like the entire time I'm just like, don't look at me, don't look at me, don't look at me. Like, freaking out. And it was one of those things where
you're on stage.
Yeah, man. And
at the most reputable club in the world.
So that's the 4th room.
But hey, let me tell you, I've done a show in the Fat Black, and I still tell people I performed at the Cellar.
It is the Cellar.
It counts.
It is the Cellar. It's just when it's 2 a.m. and everything else is shutting down.
Yeah.
It's like,
so did you just like obviously you get the cable, you put it back, and
he and I got cool again.
Okay.
Like it was just a momentary like what the fuck, and then we're cool, but it is hard to recover from that when the rest of the room is like, this is 2 a.m.
Yeah.
We want to laugh and we can't because we're incapacitated.
Yeah.
And it's like as soon as I got off, one of the next comics was like, all right, first set here, huh? Like at this show,
yeah.
Like, they're like, yeah, you'll get used to it. And you do. So now it's like I've adjusted to it and I know how to handle that room a little bit better at that time. But
is that when you have an audience like that, is that a yell room? Like, is that like we got to get everyone's attention? Like,
it's more of you just got to play conductor a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like everybody's drunk. They want to talk.
Yeah. And
the only way to engage with it, you have to engage with them because they're not gonna
listen otherwise.
No, and so it's hard to like keep everybody. It's just spinning plates. It's all right. I've got this person from Norway. I've got this person from fucking Greenville,
Argentina,
something like that. And it's how am I going to get these two to connect? Because the only way that this is going to work, they don't want material at this point. Is what is the connection between Norway and Greenville or whatever, and that gets everybody laughing. And it's tricks at that point as opposed to jokes.
Yeah,
and that's okay. It's just
it's what the money's for. It's what you're like there to do. It's like
your job is to entertain.
Exactly.
And if you're not entertaining, I'm a firm believer that you are not doing the job.
Exactly.
You can entertain in different ways in different places. At the Cellar, it is you have to get laughs at by any means necessary. Yeah. When it's anywhere else, it's like you can be entertaining without being jokes.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you're not engaging, it's like, and people have paid money, it's like you're not doing the job.
Yeah. And I've had sets like that where especially
everybody
in New York,
of course.
But in New York, I know we can kind of connect on this too, is where I'm a big believer. I'm very pretentious when it comes to comedy. I know we talked about that last time, how you said something really funny. And if nobody listened to it or go back and listen to it, but you were like, yeah, I used to be really pretentious about it too. But then I'd be hammered and be like, let me show you how it's done.
Exactly.
But I've had shows in New York where I'm like, this material is good. I know this material is funny and relatable. Like, not all of it, because I talk a lot about my alcoholism and stuff, and sometimes that turns people off because everyone's drinking.
Yes.
But I've also had sets where like I've come off stage and like the host is like, hey, like you got to engage. Like you have to talk to this is New York. Like they expect you to engage with them. And I'm always like, oh no, I just go up and do jokes. And they're like, that might work wherever you're from, but up here you have to, even if it's a false sense of engagement,
Sure.
you still have to engage. Like you said, you ask questions to set up jokes.
Yes.
Like you have to do something to engage the audience.
I think that's true. I think it also just depends because like if you do a room in like if you do like Union Hall where it's like, okay, they want to be they're either comedy nerds or they're fans of the people that they're coming to see. It's like a very, I don't know, it's a purpose-driven room.
Yeah.
And you have to adjust based on what they want. And that's okay. It's just maybe it's not jokes, maybe it's not engaging, but it's like if you're at a room where it's like, oh, they're giving you nothing and they're checked out, it's like you have to just do what you have to do to get them on your side.
And we have so many tricks where we can do that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I do think that in New York, it just depends on where you are. Like somewhere like, you know, Broadway or the Stand or any of those places where it's like, I just think there's a different expectation.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, this is the kind of place where I'm expected to be talked to if I walk in.
Yeah.
Whereas at the Cellar, they're like, we paid to see comedy.
Material.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone is better than the other. I think it's just different styles.
It is totally different.
And I think that's the thing about like fits. Like, I do feel like I fit in at the Cellar. I don't feel like I fit in at every other club in New York. And that's okay. And it's just.
There are clubs where I'm like, oh, I definitely don't fit here.
Totally. And it's like, I can beat myself up over it and then like, or worse, like be like, I have to change what I do to get in there. And it's like, one thing I can comfortably say at the Cellar is like, it is all A material that I'm, of my A material. And I do think that it's not all the most of it's pretty unique. Some of it's not, but it's like, I know that like I'm not compromising myself with the material I do at the Cellar. Whereas I feel like at other places, it's like maybe I have to put on this persona of like, women are fucking gay or whatever. Like, and it's just like, that's not what I do. And it's like, I don't want to do that. And I think that this year has been really, the fun thing has been altering the same material for those spaces and figuring out where I can do my thing without, and still get laughs in rooms that I normally wouldn't. Yeah. And whereas at the Cellar, it's like, no, they're not gonna make fun of me for talking about this, that, or the other. They're all like, is it funny?
Yeah.
And
that's all they
can. Yeah.
And that's the thing I love so much about it is the fact that it's just like,
I think that every club thinks that though. It's just, are you funny for my room?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, we've run into this where there are places where obviously it's a business and they want to sell tickets and stuff. And so they'll put people up that got famous some other way. Totally. Who aren't actual comedians or have not. They're people who do comedy, but they're not, you know, initiated.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you're just like, what? And then you'll look and they're getting like 10 or 15 spots a month. And you're like, what the fuck is going on? And Tracy will often remind, she's like, Brendan, it's a bit like they have to sell tickets. And
that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, that makes sense. But the Cellar has always been a place, and this is why I've always held it in such high regard, where it's like, its name sells the tickets for it. Yes. So they can really focus on like funny.
Yes.
Funny. Let's do fun. Hey, everybody, let's do funny.
Let's
do comics.
Because every show, there's 4 rooms and they are sold out every night.
Every single night.
And it's...
Doesn't matter what time it is either.
No, and it's because they know if they're going, there's like, okay, there is a certain criteria of funny that's here. And you're going to see the big names. They're going to be there, but you're also going to see people that you have no fucking idea about.
And then sometimes those people murder.
Yes.
What was do you have a time where you were like, after your audition and everything, where you were like, oh, I'm destroying? I know it's not couth to say that.
Well, I'll tell you this. So Sunday, I did the VU.
Okay.
Historically, I've never tanked in the VU, but it's always been the one where I'm like, I just don't understand why I'm not hitting every part of this room. Yeah. And then Sunday,
you get laughs over here.
Yeah, and it's like, but what is it? Why aren't you guys in unison here? And then Sunday, I had a set where I was like, looser, but it was like I had a firmer idea of the material I was going to do, but I was like, leave a little bit of room after this word, leave a beat here and see what happens. And it was like, oh shit, it's a bigger room. If I slow down, this is obviously going to make it better. Yeah.
That's one of my biggest problems.
Of course.
I talk too fast.
But that's the thing. At the Cellar, at the McDougal Street, you've got to talk a little faster. It's a smaller, tighter space.
Yeah.
The VU, it's like, okay, I've got to let things breathe here. And for the first time on Sunday, I was like, oh, I have this room figured out.
Yeah,
dude. But, the next time I do it, who knows? It's just like I always feel good in the bar. I've had 2 jokes that I just can't fucking not think about. The 2 jokes that didn't land at the McDougal room. Yeah. And that's over the course of 2 months. And
they're just in
I'm so aware that those, and I don't do them in that room.
Yeah. And that's a professional thing, because there are people, and I'm probably guilty of this, where it's like, no, like this is my, like we talked about earlier, like this is my art. I know this joke is good. I'm going to keep pushing it. And then all of a sudden you're not booked anymore. And you're like, what's happening?
Right. Well,
it's like what you want to do. And I'm not saying like that's what happens, but if you keep trying to push shit that is not working and it hasn't worked maybe 2 or 3 sets in a row, but you keep pushing it, like eventually someone's going to be like, stop doing that.
Yes. Or they're like, do this somewhere else. Because like the other thing, they told me, one of the managers told me very early on, she was like, don't do new jokes here. If you want to do new material, that's what Mondays are for. We have new joke night. Mm-hmm. And that's just not something I've forgotten. And it's like, okay, so just don't come in here with, at the very most, it's at this point for me, it's changing timing, maybe changing a word here and there. But like,
how long will you run a joke outside of there before you'll bring it in there?
Well,
have you done that yet?
I've
you've been there for
thought
a few
about
months.
it. So it's like there's
that's how intimidating it is, because you're like, I've thought about it.
There's one story I tell that like I didn't tell when I first started going, and I hadn't written it before, and I did it for something else, and it worked really well, and I was like, fuck it, I'll try it here, and that's been working, so that stays.
Okay.
I've got some things that are a little trickier. They've worked at New Joke Night, but I'm like, so scared, because it's
terrifying.
Well, and it's like I'm really trying right now. All the material I'm writing, the next hour I've got an outline for it now, and it's all about sex and death.
Yeah,
and it's sex, death, and like codependency shit. And so
naturally,
but it's like that's not what I want to do at the Cellar.
Yeah,
I really worry about like being too blue at the Cellar already. Yeah, like I say come like 3 or 4 times on that set. If I really push it, I can get to 7. And it's like, it works and it always does well, but it's like, I'm waiting for one time someone's going to be like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And with death shit, it's like, it's morbid stuff.
Death is hard.
It's hard. And like this joke works every time, everywhere else. It has not failed me yet. I'm so afraid to do it at the Cellar.
Yeah. And death is, because I talk about, I make jokes out of like, because there's been suicide in my life and I've attempted suicide, and I try to make bits about it, and it just hits people a different way. When you talk about death, it hits people a different way.
Totally.
Well, and it's one of those things where it's like, no, but if you look at this structurally, this is a great joke. There's a misdirect, there's this, there's that, but people are just like, yeah, but you talk about death, and we don't want to talk about that.
I think this is the first I've got this joke that I'm thinking about like opening this next hour with is it's 2 minutes of no laughs, and I know that, and it's like. It's but because it pops so hard at the end, and it's like I think the trick with death jokes is if you're using someone's death or whatever as just the setting and not the like crux of it. Like at the end of the day, if I'm talking about, it's different with suicide, but like I'm talking about. Did you know Kenny DeForest?
Yeah, of course.
So Kenny was one of my best friends, and when he died in December, like every comic started writing jokes. And they're all the same, where it's like, not the same, but the thing that keeps them together, that they all share, and the reason they all work is that everyone talking about it is talking about themselves. Mm-hmm. And it's just putting Kenny's death as the setting. Mm-hmm. So I've got this thing about how last year I got his car towed. I racked up like $900 worth of shit. And it's a long setup, but the joke is like, he let me pay him off in installments. He was such a good dude and all this. And like, I finished in November, and had I known he was going to die in December, wouldn't have paid him. Like, so it's like, and it goes into a further thing about his GoFundMe and all this. But like, there's like,
that's immediately where my brain went. Yes. I was like, well, they've got like,
exactly
$100K.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, there's 2 parts to it that makes that like. Writing it, I was like, I know that these are 2 things that have to happen for this to work. The first, I have to make it very clear that he is someone that I was close with and like loved truly and dearly, and like really do hold in high regard as a human being.
He's one of the reasons I moved to New York.
You're not the first person to tell me that.
He came to a show in Jacksonville. We talked about sobriety. We talked about all this stuff for like an hour after the show.
He was truly the best.
And he was like, if you're going to do it, man, you just got to fucking shut up and do it.
Yes.
And that was, it wasn't, I had planned on coming to New York, but that was definitely in the back of my head. And then I saw him on Crashing and I was like, dude, this guy on this HBO show told me like, just fucking grab it by the balls and go. I was like, I got to. And then when that whole thing, and I was very, obviously it struck us all. We were all sad, but I was talking to him and he was doing something with Gastor Almonte and they were like working on something.
We have a show together.
Yeah. And so he was like, hey man, I'm really busy. I'd love to come on the podcast. Maybe like the beginning of 2024. Yeah. And then everything happened. I was like,
it's the worst. I mean, it was awful. It was truly awful. Yeah. And like, but that's the thing. It's like, the second part of it is like I have to make sure that the joke is on me being an asshole, not him.
Yeah, of course.
Because he wasn't. And and I think that's the thing. Like the thing that like really blew my mind with Kenny's passing was like I've known a lot of people that have died.
Oh yeah.
Kenny was the first where I can't think of a single person who could or would have something shitty to say about him.
Yeah, that's true, especially in the circles that we've run in before. It's like, dude, people die in this lifestyle. People die.
Yes, but and like with Kenny, it was a freak accident, and it's like,
no, I'm talking about before when we were drinking and doing drugs and stuff.
Yes.
Like that happens all the time.
Yes, and the cool thing about, really one of the coolest things about Kenny was like after he died, you know, in New York it was all comics. Mm-hmm. That was it, and then afterwards it was like you forget this was a guy who had a very a full life before comedy as like. A almost professional collegiate basketball player. And like you hear about.
I love in his bio, he still said NBA free agent. That was my favorite.
It's dude. Because like it was just wild because after he died, like, you know, at the service, like they streamed the service and it's like you see a lot of people that he played basketball with or he had the same impact on them as he did in comedy. It's like he was always the guy that was like, well, if you're going to commit to basketball, you need to just fucking commit.
Yeah.
And he had this like, but he was also like, but I'm going to be here for you the entire time.
Yeah.
And it was just interesting. I've never seen anybody like die and everybody was like, we have nothing but love for this guy.
Yeah. It was a crazy.
And it's like there's no silver lining.
No.
But like it was pretty.
I mean, you got that great joke out of it, which you would appreciate.
And there are two others that I've seen that I'm like, whoa, these are perfect. These are.
And if anybody would appreciate that, Kenny would
totally. And his dad, like. So I read there was a New York Times article about him, and they went to clean out his apartment, and one of the first things, you know, before his parents got there, because they were like, we got to make sure it's just whatever. And the record that he had in his stand was from a band that he was listening to called Oh He Dead. And like the last part of the article in the Times is his dad being like, now that's funny. And it's like, because that is who he was. We knew people that died and we knew people that were in shitty situations. And it's like, we make the jokes. And he was truly one of the funniest people where a lot of people say, like, I wish I could make jokes about him dying with him because he would get them more than
he would love it.
Yeah, dude. So it's like, but that's the thing. I'm not going to talk about this at the Cellar.
Yeah.
Like, you know. Hey,
way to bring it back.
Yeah.
Fucking professional.
Well, yeah, dude, thank you. This is why I get paid $40 every now and then. But like,
3 times a week
if I'm lucky. But it's like, that is truly it, though. It's like you find what works in that room. I know that joke has been working everywhere else. I just don't think it's.
Yeah.
It worked at New Joke Night. I don't think for a crowd of people because New Jokes is all people that love comedy. Mm-hmm. They're not like casual fans. Whereas this, it's like, fuck, I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's a long walk for it not to work.
I've had, because as a storyteller, I will not bail on. I shouldn't say I won't, but you know, as a professional, you're like, no, we're going to slog through because there might be a huge payoff at the end. We're going to keep going. And I've had it where it hasn't worked. And you're like, what is it? That's time? All right. Thank you. Good night.
Or it's, oh shit, 8 more minutes.
That's when you look up and go, how much time do I have?
Dude, one of the funniest things I've ever seen, like, in Pensacola.
Shouts out.
Yep. I was with Roland and we were doing a show and this was like, we were so young. We were probably like 23 and we got booked to both do 45 minutes at the end of an open mic, essentially. And we were both like, well, we have to do it.
Yeah.
We have to do it. And I'll never forget Michael counting the minutes down on stage, like 41 more minutes, guys. We're on our way. 36 more minutes, and just like same thing. Like there have been jokes that don't kill at the Cellar where I'm like, that was a long fucking walk for not a lot, and it's just, but that's the thing, because all my shit's story based, and it's like. And if it doesn't work, I really fucking shoot myself in the foot.
Can we go back, you guys? Let's just rewind the tape.
Yeah. Please, let me show you where this did work. Yeah. You see how there were 2 people in this bar in Bushwick?
Yeah,
they loved it.
It crushed.
Ate it up.
Have you, because you have been sober for a while now, have you...
well, I do want to be clear.
Oh, I'm sorry. You haven't been drinking for a while.
I don't want to steal valor here.
Yeah. So the last time you were on, actually, we talked about the fact that you were in and out of the program through different outpatient stuff and things like that. And then the program, as far as AA, wasn't for you, but then you still, maintained not drinking.
Well, yeah. And it's not even, this is where I really kind of waffle.
Let us know.
I fucking loved 12-step programs, AA, NA, C, whatever it is. I think that it's like the best way, the most consistent way for people to get sober.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, if I was really, really honest with myself, I would tell myself, well, you still smoke pot. And if we're being even more honest, if fish comes around, you're probably going to do drugs.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm afraid of 12-step programs at this point because I'm still holding on to
that last
little bit. And the problem is it's not ruining my life.
Yeah.
And
it's so...
I know.
That's the clip.
yeah, dude. It's because it's like that's a real thing for me. It's like if at any point I was smoking pot and I went
on stage and bombed, and then all of a sudden things started happening, you'd be like, oh, I have to cut this out immediately.
And the other thing about it is it's like, but then the part that I remember is like, yeah, but I didn't think I had a problem with booze until I knew I did and couldn't stop. And now it's like, I'm waiting for that moment where it's like, well, have you just tried not smoking pot for the day and waiting to see, like, can I not smoke pot for the day? And then it's like, I'm afraid if I do that, it'll be like, oh, shit.
Well, and this is something that happens, especially in our industry, in the business of show and in bigger cities like New York and LA and stuff. And I don't begrudge any. The thing that makes me upset is when comics, because that's the world I live in, will get on stage and say, I'm sober.
Yeah.
And they're not. And that's something where I'm like,
same. It drives me nuts.
Again, to your point earlier, like, it's about entertainment and it's about this and it's about that. But to me, that's so like...
Well, there's being entertaining and then there's being dishonest.
Yeah, there's just lying.
Right.
And it's one... Because it's not very much more difficult to say, oh, I don't drink. I haven't had a drink.
I've got this bit about going to fish shows and it's like, I don't drink anymore. But here's... and the joke is that I'll like get all high and be like, can you believe I haven't had a drink? And like... and it's like... But that's the thing. If you're gonna say you're sober and then not be, my whole thought process on this is, whatever you're doing in your life, if you're doing comedy, people are gonna either pay attention via what you put out there, or if someone tags you in something or whatever. And if someone sees you've got a beer in front of you and then you're going around telling people you're sober, it's like, well, are you?
You shatter the illusion. The whole idea of stand-up is
or you're relapsing
vulnerable.
And everybody's got a thing to say about it. And it's like...
But it's this idea of... Because all of my comedy, and I can speak to this wholeheartedly, all of my comedy comes from a place of truth.
Yes.
Most of it is completely true.
Sure.
If not 2 or 3 different stories that I weave together as one.
Embellishments and then there's
there's stuff like that.
But
I've literally had people come up to me after shows and be like comics, and they'll be like, hey, what if you said this instead of that? And I go, well, that's not how it happened.
Yeah.
And they go, yeah, but it's funnier. And I go, actually, this joke works pretty well. It actually works very well the way it is. So I'm not going to change it to soften it because that's going to make you more comfortable.
Totally.
Like, that's not what happened.
That's the thing. That's what I feel at the Cellar is I don't feel like I have to change who I am to perform.
Exactly.
There,
Yeah.
right. And like, there are some other clubs where I feel like, oh, I would have to. Excuse me. And that's
make it softer. Yeah.
Not even make it softer, but it's like, oh, am I going to have to embellish in a way that I don't like, as opposed to, I feel like the nice thing about the way that I do comedy is all of the embellishments are to further exaggerate that I'm a fucking idiot.
Yeah, exactly. That I'm a piece of shit sometimes.
Yes. Or that I do this thing about chasing my ex-girlfriend to Europe and shit, and it's like, I'm clearly the bitch in the situation, you know? I'm clearly the one that like...
Was this the one that you found the text messages on the computer?
No. That lady, I feel terrible about. To this day, I think about her.
That is another thing about us, especially people who have maybe addiction issues, as I guess you would label it. I still think about stuff from decades ago where I'm like, you motherfucker.
I really, really feel horrible for who I was in that relationship. And, it's that part of making amends where I still believe in shit like that.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I've got a bastardized version of the 12 steps that I do. And I'm
took a machete to it. And you're like, yeah, this works.
This works for me. And it's like, it's one of those things where I've really kind of played in my mind, like, is this going to be hurtful if I reach out? Or is it worth it to reach out?
Yeah, I've gone through that with my sponsor where I'm like, I have to make amends to my ex-fiance. And he's like, yeah, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, and
we're not going to contact your ex-fiance who's now married with a child.
Exactly. Same situation. I don't know what she's up to. I won't bother her because I know I was just such a fucking drunk.
It's like why are you going to bring it up?
No, because every time I talked to her after we broke up, I was like, please come back. And I can't handle life without you. And it's like, I'm thrilled to not be that guy anymore. And that is like the biggest regret maybe in my life is that I wish that I could just take that back and be like, I am so sorry for just being absent.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing too is because there's a podcast I listen to that I really like, and one of the things that they end on is what advice would you give to your 16-year-old self? And I think all the time, because I listen to a ton of episodes and I'm always like, what would I tell myself at 16? And my knee-jerk reaction is like, oh, don't drink. Just don't. Because I didn't drink till I was 18. But then the more I thought about it, it was like, oh, everything that I have now, which isn't much from a financial standpoint, but like the fact that when certain people who are really big in the comedy world come into my restaurant, and if I'm not working, a lot of times the other servers will be like, oh, we have a person that works here that does comedy. And then they'll say, everybody knows Brennan. Like just the fact that I have that, I wouldn't have ever gotten without drinking.
Totally.
I say that to say it took all of that damage and all of that stuff to become the person I am now. And I'm not perfect. I still fuck up all the time. But it's like I'm definitely better than that guy.
Yes.
Showing up to my grandma's house for dinner, throwing up because I'm so hammered. And I'm like, oh, I'm anxious. And it's like, no, you're a liar.
Right. And it's like, I don't know. For me, it's like, I would never have told myself to quit drinking, but I definitely would have stopped sooner.
Yeah.
Once I really got the hang of.
Once I cleared college and went to rehab the first time, I would have been like, yeah, that's when that's it.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know.
It was the relapse and the second rehab and all that where it's like, you didn't need all that.
Yeah, dude, when I'm 23 and detox for the second time, it's like. Okay, this might be the wake-up call. You've hurt this person you love because you can't get your drinking under control and you're falling asleep on the fucking stairs.
Maybe now's the time.
Yeah. You know how you're waking up with
New York.
Yeah, dude. You know how you're waking up bruised because you fall asleep at the top of the stairs and fall down? That might be a sign that you need to stop. Just fucking, how it's like you've planned your entire life around not having to drive because you'll get a DUI. That's not.
Well, you lived at the warehouse that was right across from the bar.
Well, that was helpful. Right. But eventually you move from the warehouse and you're in another place and you're living with a woman who wants you to do well. And you're just and a roommate who's like, well, I hope you figure it out, man. Yeah. And you're just surrounded by people who truly believe in you and it's
care about you
and care, and you're just like, yeah, but
have you guys ever done Jack Daniels with a PBR? It's pretty great.
Yeah. Well, I never got that far because I was a well whiskey boy. Yeah. PBR for sure, but it was usually what was the fucking well?
That's what I was just trying to think of.
I can't even remember what well whiskey would be at this point. Evan Williams.
Yeah, that's the one, the plastic bottle.
It was always a plastic bottle. That was the thing. My roommate at the time was a liquor distributor. He worked for a liquor distribution company. And I still only had plastic bottle booze in the apartment. It's that was another thing that I really did know I had a problem because it's I wouldn't let myself drink anything nice. Yeah. It's you don't deserve this. Yeah. This is for people that don't.
Smirnoff, baby. That's all I drank.
Dude,
Smirnoff vodka.
Taka, Smirnoff, Svedka sometimes.
Yeah.
If it's plastic bottle and I can fit it in my back pocket, that's what I deserve.
We're rolling.
Yeah, exactly, dude. Anything else is either...
That's just too bougie. What do I need?
It's not going to serve the purpose I need it to. And every
I'm doing this for taste. I'm doing this to get the voices out of my head.
Exactly. And then there were there was a time where I was like, I'm going to get into bartending and like really get good at like cocktails and shit. And then it's like, yeah, but I spent $150 on bottles of liquor, the small ones, because I can't.
And some of them is like liqueurs that you'll never use.
Oh,
except
I would.
To like,
you find a way. Yeah, brother. I mean,
we talked about this on the last episode. Just drinking Midori straight. Being
Whatever
like, well,
it
this is all we got.
Dude, Campari. I used to do Campari and water. Like. And just because I was like, well, I love a Negroni and I love a Campari soda, but I don't have soda. I don't have gin. And it's like, I do have a bottle of Campari and I've got a tap. And it's, if you throw enough ice cubes and bitters in there, you can just shoot it, dude.
Dude, this is so much fun,
Dude,
man.
thank you. Always so much fun.
Of course.
Yeah.
Plug everything one more time. The album.
Yes. Album is called I Like His Style. It's on Spotify, iTunes.
Buy the vinyl.
Buy the vinyl. It looks good. If you Christmas is 8 months away. If 4 or 5, I don't know how far it is, but if you got a stocking the shape of a square, this is a great stocking stuffer. MaxFine_ on Twitter and Instagram, finecomedy.com. And if you are in Columbus, Ohio, Chicago, or Minneapolis, I'll be around in 2 weeks.
Beautiful, man.
Thank you so much.
Of course,
Brennan.
dude. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. At Brennan T Comedy on all social media, BrennanTComedy.com. Check out the merch store, and we'll talk to you next week.
Hell yeah, dude.
Dude!
Thank you.
That was
thank you.
fucking
That was
so
always
good.
fun, dude.